Hello and welcome to the Breeders' Cup Final Answers Show from In the Money Media, brought to you by our friends at TaylorMade Partnerships and Medallion Racing. I'm your host, Peter Thomas Fornatal, coming to you from Los Angeles, from a location quite near Santa Anita. I am not Jonathan Kitchen. I am Pete Fornatal. How about that graphic, that really cool graphic to kick things off? Meanwhile, you have Philip and Vanessa looking exactly as they do in real life. And then you've got me and JK. I've put on a few LBs, let's say, since that picture was taken. And the Jonathan picture is missing the stylish gray in the beard. But we're so happy to be here with you. Hello and welcome to everybody watching the replay, and especially everybody at Malone's in Lexington. Wish I could be there. I've got my Lexington-themed shirt on. Once we solve this whole being in two places at once thing, we're really going to have something. And I'll now bring you your host for this evening. She comes to us all the way from England. She's fabulous. She's Vanessa Ryle.
Thanks very much. This is where Peter flips over into pundit mode and I get to take up the presenting mode. We are all in different locations, as he said. I'm first time to California, first time to Santa Anita, of course, here for a Breeders' Cup, and I'm very overexcited. I can safely say the mornings out on the track have been spectacular as they look in the pictures and videos. It's been brilliant. I'm not entirely sure the European team is as strong as it is normally, or it has been maybe in the previous years, potentially due to Charlie Appleby's kind of slightly below par season at the top level, but we will get to that in due course. Before we go any further, let's just check in with the boys. You've already heard from Peter, but JK over there, how hyped are you for this Breeders' Cup? Do you think it's a good quality one?
Yeah, I mean, I'm always hyped for the Breeders' Cup, right? I mean, the Breeders' Cup to me is our best 2 days of racing. You know, we've got Derby Day, we've got Pegasus, we've got, the Travers Day, the 2 days for Belmont Stakes, but this is, the 14 of the championship races, and I always look forward to it. And I was actually just telling someone, I don't care where it's at either. As long as all the horses and all of the jockeys and all the trainers and all the owners show up, it still has that super special feel. So happy to be back in California. I haven't been to Santa Anita since March 5th of 2020. So it's been a while for a track that I almost consider my home track.
But you're back and you're ready to make waves and give us some winners, which is what matters. Philip, it's going to be a huge Friday specifically for you with Porta Fortuna. We will get to that, of course, very shortly indeed. You must be in a high state of excitement yourself and the team.
Yeah, we landed a few hours ago, so it's just the anticipation builds. Typically when we have a horse running, I don't get nervous till they leave the paddock, but I've been nervous for a month since she won the Sheveley Park and we kind of cemented the goal. But I told somebody the other day I'd much rather have the stress and the fun than be sitting at home watching on TV. So it's a great problem to have, and I'm really excited for all of our partners.
Absolutely. It's the saying, isn't it? Pressure is a privilege, Philip. Pressure is a privilege. So let's get cracking. Let's start. We are, of course, starting with the first Breeders' Cup race on Future Stars Friday, which is the Juvenile Turf Sprint over the 5 furlongs. And I've got a UK horse to talk about straight away. Big Evs is your favorite currently, your anti-post favorite for Mick Appleby, a first ever Breeders' Cup runner for him. Now I can inform you all that Big Evs coming over from England, he's not your typical 2-year-old sprinter, guys. Obviously, our issue in the past has been not having the gate speed of our US counterparts in these sort of races. But Big Evs, the rules like that do not apply to him. He's an absolute weapon out of the stalls, and he's a weapon at the end of his races as well. There's an interesting stat going around that his first furlong at Royal Ascot when he won was the same speed as Crimson Advocate's first furlong at Royal Ascot when she won. Obviously, she reopposed it. Well, she's in here against him on Friday. Yet Big Evs' final furlong and final time was faster than Crimson Advocate's. And he's just gone from strength to strength, and his gate speed seems to have been getting faster. I am all aboard Big Evs here, and I'm hoping it's going to start the Europeans not only off with a bang, but with a really good story as well. But I can see that all the boys are against me here. I've got a tip sheet in front of me, which is going to be shared with you guys, and you're all against me. So, JK, I shall start with you. Who is going to beat Big Evs and why?
Wow, I almost forgot who I picked. Look, I know that some Europeans have had some success over here in this race, but it's not what you guys do well. There's other things that you do significantly better than us. And although there's this, he looks faster than a majority of them that have come over here. I still think that there's a possibility he'll still experience some of the issues that they often happen in these big full fields with these fast gate horses. So I like him a lot. I do respect him, but I'm going to go with the Mitz Waves. And it's a little bit of a homer pick for me. Close to the situation. Good friends own the horse. But I think sometimes in those situations, and I think people in the audience, when with your medallion horses too, when you know every step of what happened and why it happened and how it happened, and you know the reasons it happened and what she ate and when she didn't eat and how she didn't eat and when she ate and does she how many peppermints she's had. When you know everything, you can make better decisions. And I don't think a Mitz Waves likes soft ground. I think she's going to get firm ground. I think she's going to get pace to close into, and that's why I picked her in here.
Okay. PTF, I think you're on the same wavelength, excuse the pun, as JK.
I can piggyback, and it's no disrespect to Big Evs. I mean, this horse, as a figure guy, this horse is the horse to beat. Talked to a couple of different experts, including Rob Dove, one of the top 10 pro punters in the UK today, as well as talking to Sean Borman on our Pro Punter show. The Pro Player show is not on YouTube. So if you're a YouTube fan of our content, you're going to have to go into iTunes to listen to that one. There's a lot of great tidbits in there. They both have Big Evs faster than everybody else. But I'm just going with a bit of a pace, makes the race case here. I think you can make a good case that a Mitz Waves is the best closer, could be a bit of a burn-up. And if there are some issues with Big Evs, I think a Mitz Waves is an excellent alternative at a price. I mean, for me, the biggest thing is just the trip last time. I thought she had meaningful trouble at a critical stage, and I think she'll go better. And I think that's your exacta. I mean, I'm going to be very much playing a Mitz Waves over Big Evs. And then I've got plenty of use for Slider. Not an easy draw, but a horse that I'm interested in getting into some exotics possibilities as well.
So for the numbers, guys, PTF and JK have both gone 9, 4, 11, Mitz Waves, Big Evs, and Slider. But Philip, very different selections for you. Give me your reasoning and why. Well, who and why?
Yeah, I basically agree with JK, and then I picked 3 Euros and 1, 2, 3. It's a race that Euros haven't done well, though. Last year they went 1, 2. I think the 5 furlongs makes it a little bit tougher, but I just thought the 4 main speeds are drawn in 1, 2, 3, and 4. And Big Evs is fast, Crimson Advocate's fast, No Name Mets is fast, and Tiger Bell's been on the lead. I don't know that she's as fast as the other 3. But I ended up landing on Gimme the Beat Boys. I think he's been running against the best colts in Europe, which is something that you normally don't see. Some of these horses that are in the sprint, they're primarily running in these shorter races against a different quality of horse. But I thought he ran really good at Ascot. He ran, well in the Phoenix. In the middle park, he looked like a winner a furlong out. And he just, in all these 6 furlong races, he just hits a wall at 5.5, and he just backs up significantly. But I think the cutback could help. I think if he doesn't completely blow the break, he should get, a mid-pack toward, and I'm just hoping for a pace meltdown. I think, the boys are hoping for a similar kind of setup for a Mitz Wave. She might be a little bit closer just because she has more experience to American-style racing. But I just think he's a lot higher quality than the horses that typically come over for this race. I'd say, he would have been a higher quality, even dramatized, who was one, or Silver Knot, who won it last year. Or no, one Silver Knot, it was the other Appleby. But Mischief, yeah. Just feels like he's got his form in Europe's better. So hopefully the cutback helps.
Okay, 5.84 for Philip in that first race. Let's move on, guys, to the Juvenile Fillies over the mile and half a furlong on the dirt track. And won't be a surprise to everybody watching and listening later out there that we're all in agreement here with Tamara. She's the big talking horse. Everyone's chatting about her here at the track. Obviously, beautifully bred, 2 from 2. There's not a huge amount not to like about her, but of course she's also taking on some very talented fillies in behind, a lot of unbeaten horses and some in there with, you know, a bit more experience as well. But Peter, I'll start with you here. We've all made it pretty simple and gone with the 7 here in Tamara. Is it as straightforward as that?
I really, really think it is. And I think Vivi's dream not being in this race takes what I already thought was, you know, penalty kick and makes it something that I'm going to use a phrase we use on the podcast from time to time. If it wasn't horse racing, you'd say she couldn't lose. For me, there's one, and most of my play is just going to be all about her and her winning. But I do have this goofy idea on a horse that's going to be a very big price in the 13 Alice Beach, who last time showed a lot of speed, but I'm thinking in this race, maybe gets more of maybe they just break it from that far outside post. Maybe they just try to drop in and not go forward. And I just like how she stuck on. I like her visually, the way she finished in some of her previous races. And maybe she can get a little piece underneath of Tamara, but it's the Tamara show for me.
Okay. JK, how are you playing this race? You've obviously popped her in as your main selection for the win, but who's following her in behind and who are you on side with?
Look, I've been to hang out at the Malone thing for this medallion party, and the bar is a lot of fun. And there's a break coming up after this, so I'm going to hurry so everyone can get to the bar. Tamara's gone. I like the 11 underneath as a price. The 10, excuse me, accommodate Ava. The 10 as a price. I think Tamara's just better than these horses, and I can just repeat myself over and over about why I feel that way. She's just faster, so I think she's going to win.
Yeah, no, I can see that. And sometimes I think, Philip, we can be at risk of overcomplicating these things. Do we need to do that with this race?
You know, I don't think so. The only thing that makes me nervous, I've heard a few of the clocker type people out there say, you know, she isn't the best mover in the world, but, you know, at the end of the day, like her B race is probably good enough to beat most of the horses in here, so she looks like she can be pretty tough.
And I will say this too, just to be, you know, in the Breeders' Cup, when you have all these amazing horses out here training, it's easy for someone to say, "Oh, that one's not moving that great," or that, because they're all so gorgeous. They're all the best horses in the world. I remember a couple years back at Del Mar, there was some buzz going around, some pretty heavy buzz that Echo Zulu wasn't training that well, and you know what she turned into.
Yeah, I think the key with all of it is, especially you get guys that come watch this horse that have never seen her before. And, you know, people are always like, how much of the physical do you look into? And I always say 0, because I don't ever watch these horses. You know, if I'm watching them on TV, you get a very quick snippet. You know, I'll go to like JK's, you know, Maggie Wolfendale or somebody that watches the horses, knows them from race to race. But, you know, if you don't consistently see a horse, you have no barometer on how to judge how they normally do. Some horses just are better movers than others. That doesn't affect them when they come to run in the race.
Yeah, for sure. Let's move on, guys, to the Juvenile Fillies Turf over the 1 mile, of course. And the focus here has to be Porta Fortuna for the Medallion Racing team. Philip, it's only right that we'll start with you, but you'll be amused that obviously she's in against another European in Carla's Way, and they're sort of the two of them are at the top of the anti-post market. Carla's Way for Simon and Ed Crisford, who's kind of more proven at the trip after what we saw her do at Newmarket the last day in the Rockfell Stakes. Some people say she was a little bit lucky that day in terms of it was messy and behind for others, but she can only go and win, and that's what Carla's Way did. That was over the 7. She'll definitely get the mile. Porta Fortuna, of course, won over the 6 in the Cheveley Park and is stepping up to the mile for the first time, and that's where we will focus our question to you, Philip. But you will laugh that when I was filling out our tip sheet, everyone else has put their tips in already. And I'm going to give it away, but basically JK and Peter and yourself, of course, all sung from the same hymn sheet in Porta Fortuna. And I thought, well, I can't tip up Carla's way now, so I'll have to go with Porta Fortuna. So in she went.
Peer
so
pressure.
It's peer pressure. So it's a clear sweep for her. But how is she? What's the inside intel from Donica's yard? And are you confident of her staying the trip?
I'm as confident as I can be without her having run the race already. I think typically if you look at the Albany just as a race and horses that can run that, a lot of them, I mean, Maj ran second and she just, she won the 1,000 Guineas just as a recent example. Meditate won this race after winning the Albany last year. So the top two from that race last year, both, Meditate probably didn't quite get it as a 3-year-old, but she definitely got it as a 2-year-old. I think the great thing about Porta Fortuna is she just travels really well in her races, but she's just very kind. Like, she doesn't pull. She's just got plenty of natural speed. She seems to want to shut off. I think for a European horse, the other thing that always impresses me is she doesn't have to get covered up. So breaking from 6, if we end up being a little bit wide, at some point, I don't feel like she's a horse that just the second she gets daylight, she's just going to run off, which, I think Carla's the way the Rockfell played out, they went a very good gallop. They kind of made a bunch of those horses run behind. And while I think you could say, well, the second and third place finisher came back to run 1-2 in the Fillies mile, they basically ran against each other and a couple of horses that felt like a cut below. So I think the form of that race, it looks great on paper, but then you say, I think it was a 6-horse field in the Fillies mile. That even was a little bit of a messy race, and Ylang ended up just staying on and wanting the distance more. So, fingers crossed she'll handle the mile. We've always kind of felt like this was the race. We bought her after her maiden, and we kind of said, hey, we're going to run in this Group 3 at Nace. If she runs good, we can go to Ascot. If she doesn't, we'll bring her to America. She obviously won the race at Nace, won at Ascot, which is just a dream for all of our partners. And then at that point, the full focus was Breeders' Cup. We kind of felt like coming to America, there's really only a handful of graded stakes races where there's plenty in Europe. So the focus is always shifted, and, fingers crossed she runs big. And at this point, she's too good in Europe to even entertain coming to America, bar the Breeders' Cup. So, fingers crossed she runs big on Friday.
Well, look, we genuinely are all rooting for you. Peter, I know one of the angles you really like when it comes to betting these Breeders' Cup races with the Europeans anyway, is trainers and owners who have had it on the agenda for a horse from a little way out. E.g., it's not just an afterthought because they've got in or because they could. It's been on their agenda. And of course, that applies to Porta Fortuna, as Philip has just explained. Is that the big angle you like with her? Plus, of course, what she's been doing on the track?
I mean, for me, it's all about the combination of class, incredibly classy type for this race. There's the speed figure angle, definitely has an edge. And then as for the 2 turns question, of course it's a question, but we're dealing with a horse. If you can get 6 furlongs at Ascot with the sort of stiff finish there, it's very, very likely you're going to be able to get 2 turns on firm ground at Santa Anita. I think in terms of a test of stamina, they're actually about similar. And then, of course, as you point out, Vanessa, anytime you've got a very talented trainer with a target, that always makes my wagering antenna perk up. Porta Fortuna to the hoop.
All right. And JK, do you have anything else to add other than, you've slotted in Porta Fortuna as the win, but anything else in behind?
No, look, in these races is the Juvenile Turf Fillies and the Juvenile Fillies or the Juvenile Turf. I try to look at the speed figures. Timeform US does a great job of giving you a figure that you can kind of compare to some of the other performances we've seen here. Here's what I do know is that I don't think the US offers too many good Juvenile Turf Fillies. And if Europe is bringing over 2 of their good ones, then to me, that's enough to move forward. And so look, I went with Porta Fortuna, and she feels pretty. I used in front of Carla's Way just because I thought she ran extremely well in her 2 races, but I don't have a whole lot to offer in this race outside of the fact that it's pretty simple to me. I thought Hard to Justify ran well last time, but she just got an easy lead, and it's hard to play horses off of easy leads like that when they might not be as good as some of their competition. So I'll have some more creative and cute things to say as we get further along in these races.
Yeah, that will allow you that. So JK's gone 6, 11, 9 for what it's worth. But essentially, we're all with, of course, Porta Fortuna, and we weren't told to say that. Let's move on to the Juvenile on the turf, of course, and over the mile and half a furlong. And if we're all in agreement with Porta Fortuna, it's very much the opposite for these colts on the dirt. The selection sheet is all over the place, lads. JK, I'm going to start with you, hoping that you've referenced having something a little bit different to play here. You've got Locked, Muth and Timberlake currently on the anti-post markets in the UK, all the same price. They all come in here with different form lines, different crossover lines. It's absolutely fascinating to me as an outsider when it comes to these dirt races. Can you even attempt to unpick this with any real confidence? It feels like it is wide open.
I'm extremely confident that whoever wins this race is likely on to superstardom.
Wow.
We know what the juveniles and what the juvenile produces. It gets everyone excited about the Derby. But this is such a good group of horses that could be really horses that you could really, really lean on if there weren't, the other horses you could really, really lean on. Timberlake, Prince of Monaco, Muth, Locked. I think General Partner's pretty damn good. I would say this, though. One of my favorite things about being at Saratoga is hearing all the buzzy things and about horses and kind of taking notes in your head and talking to people. I had a Hall of Fame trainer tell me that he has never, under any age, sex, has ever seen a horse work better on the Oklahoma than Timberlake did on 2 occasions. 2.
Wow.
Which is why I was so shocked why this horse ran so poorly in the Hopeful, considering the trip and how the horse came back to win and run. Now I understand he is who I think he was, and I think that Timberlake's going to continue to improve and continue to grow. I think Prince of Monaco is really good, but the gap for a young horse concerns me. I know Baffert can do it with American Pharoah. He can do it with Arrogate going long, going the 1.25 miles, but it bothers me with a horse like Prince of Monaco that they took that little bit of a break leading up to this. So I'm going to pick Timberlake on top. I will use Prince of Monaco. And I do believe that General Partner is extremely live, and I'm a little bit against Locked. I know he ran well, but I'm a little bit against him. I think that race is a little bit dressed up.
Okay, very interesting. So JK then has gone 4-8 in this fascinating renewal of the Juvenile. Meanwhile, we better go to you then, PTF, next, because he's against Locked, and yet Locked, horse number 6, is in your top spot.
Yeah, we're not exactly oppo in our view of the race. I think we have the contenders identified similarly, but I just think Locked looks like a horse that's poised to make another forward move. And I think that's really what's interesting about him. I guess we just see that last race a little bit differently. But I'm less worried about the form of the race because I like him so much from a condition angle, if that makes sense. I just think he's going to run his best race, and I think that puts him right in the mix. Timberlake, I'm still hung up on that not ridiculously, but just very low hopeful speed figure. But I'm beginning to come around. I'm definitely going to be having a lot of combinations with Timberlake in them. For me, I'm anti Prince of Monaco for similar reasons JK was intimating. And I think Muth is probably the more interesting of the Baffert pair. That would be my third one in there. I may just try to lock this race up with those 3. But yeah, Locked, technically my top pick.
Okay, 6, 4, 10 then for Peter. And then just to add some real extra confusion into the mix, Philip, we'll throw over to you to suggest someone else completely.
Yeah, I would be on the same vein as JK and Pete. I'm probably slightly against Prince of Monaco, just same reason JK and Pete talked about. Just, he might be good enough, but I'm not sure pedigree says longer is better. and he does have this break, which just isn't ideal. I ended up landing on the 11 Noted. He's got to get way better, but he's going to be a big price, I think. He's only run one time on the dirt. He ran really well. He beat Dornock, who's a horse that's had a lot of hype surrounding him. That horse came back and won as easy as you could possibly win at Keeneland, albeit against much softer competition. And I just think I could see a scenario where Timberlake and a bunch of these horses just hook up 3/8 out, and somebody just comes and picks up the pieces. And I think that could be Noted. I'm not going to throw off Locked or Muth or Timberlake, off any of my tickets. But Noted's a horse I want to include. I think his one dirt race was pretty good. And I think if some of these horses that are going to get similar trips, if they really amp the pressure up with 3/8 left, it could leave them vulnerable late.
Okay, 11, 6, and 10 then for Philip in the juvenile. Let's move on. Last race before the break, and you get to go get a drink and freshen yourself up before we rattle through Saturday. But of course, we have the Juvenile Turf to focus on first, and very hopeful obviously for the Europeans in this. Aidan O'Brien to the fore, and it's River Tiber who is the choice of Ryan Moore and is the choice of a couple of the lads as well. That has meant that Unquestionable is sort of the second string for Aidan, but of course has the booking of Frankie Dettori on. After that, there's a couple in there, the likes of Endlessly, and then there's some horses at a few bigger prices. Carson's Run, currently 12-1 as well. But the focus is at the top of the market with the Europeans. River Tiber was such a precocious 2-year-old. He was very much the O'Brien talking horse 2-year-old at the start of the year. He won his maiden so early, rattled all the way through to the Coventry at Royal Ascot. Very much the hype horse. His profile has become a little bit unsexy with the defeat since he's been sort of slightly pummeled by Van Dijk, who of course is one of the crack 2-year-olds over in Europe currently. He's stepping up from the 6 to the mile for the first time. There's a stat going around that no Aidan O'Brien juvenile, he's run, is it 23 or 25 juveniles in this race in the past? And none of them in that process have stepped up from the 6 to the mile without doing the 7 in between anywhere. The only horse to do that was, of course, Johannesburg on the dirt. So it's an interesting angle that they haven't had the opportunity to step him up in trip from the 6. But for me, that's because back home, he's having to deal with two pretty extraordinary 2-year-olds back at home to beat. So he hasn't really had the opportunity, River Tiber, for the team. This is his chance, and I think he's going to shine. He's the choice of Ryan Moore. There seems to be a real split divide about whether Ryan has made the right choice. Jake, I'm going to come to you first for this one. Do you think Ryan has chosen the right horse above Unquestionably?
So it's funny, if you weren't on here and someone else asked me that question, I would text you, hey, do you think Ryan picked the right horse? And then you would tell me the answer to that question, and then I would regurgitate that question on this airway. I've always told people, to be a good horse player, you have to know what you don't know and then know what you know. I just don't follow the racing over there enough to make that assessment. But I will tell you this. One of the things I do is I listen. And I listen to – we had Michael Adolphson on our show that talked about that decision and him waiting. He watches a lot of it. He knows all of it, waiting to see who Ryan was going to choose. And then hearing you talk about the horse – I do believe, based on other people's opinions, that Ryan picked the right horse. But in a multi-race situation, I'm not getting beat by Unquestionable, right? I'm going to use that horse as well in here. But I do think one of these two Aidan O'Brien horses will win based on what I think the other horses have to offer. Okay, so we're talking, Philip, I know you obviously follow the European racing very closely, specific the 2-year-olds. Do you see where I'm coming from in the sense that this River Tiber hasn't had the opportunity because of City of Troy and because of Henry Longfellow, because of what they're doing? It's made life tough for a horse like River Tiber, who is so precocious.
Yeah, and I think the fact that he had the midseason issue because he would have been a heavy favorite in the Phoenix, and he just couldn't make the
Yeah.
race. And then he went to the Morney, slightly under 100%, and he came on. I think the interesting thing, like something I looked at a lot with Porta, but the middle park they ran it 30 minutes after the Shively Park. The Shively Park was actually just a faster race in final time. And like Van Dijk looked like a world beater in there, but like for reference, Porta Fortuna actually ran a final 3/8 faster than Van Dijk did and a final 8th. So on like pure time, I don't even know how strong the middle park was. You would just say on the face of it, Van Dijk's the only 2-time Grade 1 winner in Europe, so it had to be pretty strong. But the time is a little bit weird for me. And I think ultimately that's why I went with unquestionable. He's already been 7. But what I would say is I think it's a flip of a coin. Like I'm going to play them both at equal weight. And I'm probably only going to play those two. I think one of the two of them wins.
Totally get that. And also think, there's less question marks about unquestionable in the sense of, another pun. Very good on the puns today. In the sense of he's pretty rock solid. River Tiber was very keen the last day. You'd want him just to drop the bridle a little bit, hope that a bit of that freshness has been taken out of him. Before the break, Peter, do you have anyone else you'd like to add into the mix other than the aforementioned River Tiber unquestionable angles?
I think that this could be a Ballydoyle 1, 2, 3. And I think that a Mountain Bear is worth discussing as a horse who you want to look at a giant speed figure, huge figure from the Dundalk race, has gone left-handed, huge late pace number coming out of that run as well. Obviously on form isn't supposed to lay a glove on those top two, but it's racing and weird stuff happens. And if not, there is a 1, 2, 3 potential for Ballydoyle. And the other horse I want to mention of the locals, I really like the future that Endlessly has. And that's another number I'd want on some of my tickets there. And then just very quickly about Ryan Moore and the choice. I mean, River Tiber was a month ago not coming here. And the fact that not only he's now here and Ryan Moore is riding, that's a proxy for a really great workout report. This horse must be kicking down the door at home to get here. And he is my confident top selection. And I have no knocks on unquestionable. But I think it's a really interesting race maybe to get involved in exotically.
Okay. Well, on that note then, I think we can tell people to go off, run to the bar. Now's your chance. Get up and out to the bar, please. We will take a 10-minute break. And, of course, we'll be back to talk all things Saturday at the Breeders' Cup Classic, Dirt Mile on the turf. There's loads to get through and some fascinating races. And I can already tell you there's some very split opinions coming your way again. So go and get a drink and come back in 10 minutes. We'll be back in 10. Okay. Welcome back, everyone. I hope we're all back in situ. Hope everyone has a drink in hand, please. We roll on, guys, to the Saturday of the Breeders' Cup fixture. And, of course, this is where things really start to hot up. We're going to start with the Dirt Mile. The juveniles and the 2-year-olds obviously behind us at this stage. And it's all about solid form going forward. So straight into the Dirt Mile. And I'm going to start with you, JK. You lucky devil, you. Tell me, obviously, the most sort of, I was going to say the most overdone story of the Breeders' Cup. And so, yeah, the Breeders' Cup of the last 12 months anyway is the Cody's Wish story. But I think saying overdone makes it sound like I mean that in not a positive way. I, of course, mean it in a positive sense. And 3 out of 4 of us think that fairy tale will get back on track here in the Dirt Mile. And JK, I believe you are one of them.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think it's a cute opinion to try to beat Cody's Wish off of his last 2 races, but I think he's had excuses in both of those races. And I think if you look at his race 3 and 4 back, you look at the Met Mile, you look at the Churchill Downs, you look at his race in this race last year, so 3, 4, and 5 races back. He absolutely dusts this field. And I think that in the Whitney, he wasn't himself going to 2 turns mile and an 1/8. And then I thought last time in the Vosburg, he just, the pace was slow. He broke slow. He was kind of tricky, kind of in a tricky situation. I think he's going to kind of show back up. And apparently for those who have an eye for horse flesh out here, He's just been traveling like an absolute monster around here. I think Cody's Wish will defend his title.
All right, keeping it simple then with the 3-horse Cody's Wish. The person who seems to want to knock that fairy tale off his track is you, Peter. So explain yourself. How dare you? Oh, Peter's on mute. You see this?
I did that as a tribute. I did that as a tribute to Jonathan, who does that to me. I never do that, and so now look how happy he is. Look how happy I made him.
Delighted with himself.
Leave it to me to be the guy who pisses in the Cheerios here. I'll be honest. I feel like I committed myself a long way out to wanting to beat Cody's Wish in this spot, and maybe I'm being a little bit stubborn, but I do think Zozos is a quality horse who has a major pace advantage. The closer we get to the race, though, the more in my actual wagering of Cody's Wish I'm going to be using for two main reasons. One is Jonathan intimated, really a horse who's been catching the eye. And then the other one being relating a little bit to what we talked about before about the Breeders' Cup and just the idea of a race target. I feel like after the Whitney, Bill Mott, they said, okay, we're not going to go long. We're going to go back to the dirt mile. It's probably a short horse in the Vosburg too. That was probably why he made such hard work of it. Still got the job done. He's a major player, but my official pick is to go against him with Zozos, and I'll have plenty of my betting that way.
Okay, and you, Peter, sorry, Philip, I think you're very much with the Cody's Wish fairy tale. And I mean, I'm, saying fairy tale, but as JK said, this field should be surely below him.
Yeah, I mean, I think if he comes back to his best race, everybody else is running for second. I think you could say the Whitney didn't go to plan. He didn't handle the stretch out. He was also super wide. Last time it was slower from a speed figure perspective, but Bill Mott's as good as anybody in the whole game about bringing a horse along and trying to have him peak on the big day. And like JK said, they just said he's been training like a monster. The one thing I have in the back of my mind is exactly what Pete said, that Zozos could get loose. And sometimes at Santa Anita on these big days on the dirt, it can be very hard to make up ground. I wanted a little bit of the one Pipeline. Or a Stage Raider, sorry. Pipeline's the Gunther's other horse. Stage Raider, I thought 2-back ran really well in his first start for Cherie DeVaux. Last time ran well. Zozos was just loose, wasn't catching, but gets to a two-turn mile, which, I think that's Cody's Wish won this race last year at Keeneland, which was a 2-turn mile, but it's one of the races that can be a different configuration every year depending on where they run it at. And both Stage Raider and Zozos are coming off 1-turn mile races, but I think Stage Raiders could be sit close enough, get first run on Cody's Wish, and if it's tough to close ground, could get in the exacta.
Okay, 3-4-1 then for Philip. Let's move on to the Fillies and Mares Turf. Now I find this genuinely one of the most fascinating races. I think the most fascinating race of the meeting, actually. It's just, it's got so much. So at the top of the market, you've got Inspiral, this 5-time Group 1 winner over from Europe, out and out miler over there, but with this unique profile of having such attractive trainer, jockey, of course, Gosden teaming up with Frankie. You all know that story by now. And she comes here off the back of 2 Group 1 wins. So what is not to love, you say? The fact that she's stepping up in trip is a question mark. She can be brilliant or she can flop. She's done that at she's been beaten at very short odds before. She's disappointed before when expected to go much better. Yes, she's had excuses, but there's been times where the excuses have been minimal with her. And even afterwards, trainer, jockey, etc., they don't understand why she's flopped, but she has. So she has this inconsistent profile. Bizarre, and it's a bizarre thing to say about a horse who's won multiple Group 1 races. She's taking on a 3-year-old filly from the O'Brien yard in Warm Heart, who's got this steadily progressive profile that she's built on all season long. And when she won over in France, when we last saw her in the Vermeil, she did that despite falling out the stalls, despite being in a tricky spot, having to do it the hard way, and she won it. Now, the question mark with her in Spiral is stepping up in trip, Warm Heart is stepping down in trip. And then they have In Italian to take on, who in the betting, of course, is the sort of first spot horse for Team USA. So, JK, I've hopefully explained the key European angles here. You're obviously within Italian. I know you're going to be. You've put that forward. Do you genuinely think Chad Brown's In Italian can get the better of, I'm going to call them my two, Warm Heart and In Spiral?
Well, I need you to do me a favor. I need you to rank your two, and include Tuesday from last year. And can you rank those three for me? In which order do you prefer? Who's better of those three?
Okay, I go like this, please. Number 1, Warm Heart. Number 2, In Spiral. Number 3, Tuesday. Okay,
so then, I think in a situation where then I'm going to show some respect to Warm Heart and In Spiral, when if your answer would have been different, I would have leaned heavily on In Italian. I think In Italian is special. She's shown that on the racetrack, but I think one of the things that she is that I love is that she's a forwardly placed distance turf horse, which we don't always have. We have some that can go out there and get loose and get cheap, and then they'll win if things go their way. In Italian's one of those like almost dirt horses where she's better going 46 than she is going 48 on the front end. And she reminds me a lot of, no, she doesn't remind me of, she makes me think of Day at the Spa, who Chad trained going 1.25 miles here and let her get loose on the front end. She's like 17 times better than Day at the Spa. I think if In Italian can find a way to go 47, 46 and 4, I think she'll wire this group. And I like the inside draw from her. I think they'll send her away from there. I respect the Euros. I'll use them defensively. Not defensively. I'll use them as well to defend the opinion of how much I love In Italian. But those are the only three I'm going to use. In Italian, Warm Heart, and In Spiral.
Yeah, okay. I get that, and I am really respectful of In Italian, but I think, I do. I think Warm Heart is a better horse than Tuesday. Peter, I'm going to come to you next here because, we mentioned it in the first part there, talking about you liking that profile of horses who have been targeted at the Breeders' Cup from a little way out. And we always wait to see how the O'Brien team develops and how that goes and how it falls into place nearer the time, what actually gets on the plane to come over here. But Warm Heart had her ticket sorted after that York win. She was being spoken about then as very much a horse to target for the Breeders' Cup from the team, which was an early shout for the O'Briens.
Love York form, generally speaking, coming to the USA. I think it's a race where there's 3 different pace scenarios, and which scenario it is going to dictate the winner. If In Italian gets her absolute dream run, as JK was describing, I think she can wire him. I think under those circumstances, there's a world in which Warm Heart finds this 1.25 miles starting down the hill just a bit too sharp for what she does well. In Spiral, as you mentioned, throws in the occasional clunker. She's a little hard for me to trust as a top pick, so I'm happy with making In Italian my top pick in that regard. But if In Italian, if something goes a little bit wrong, if they go a little bit too fast early, whatever happens, In Spiral handles the bends, which is an open question, I do think there's a world in which she gets the absolute perfect trip. And again, maybe it's just a little bit too sharp for Warm Heart. Or they go fast, they bring stamina into play, and it's all over, and Warm Heart wins. So in terms of my betting scenarios, I want to account for all 3 of those possibilities. Last week, when In Italian was still silly prices, she was the clear value of the race. That's gone. And now it's a question of picking the one you want. I'm sticking to my guns and sticking with In Italian, but just starting from scratch, it's almost like a co-pick with Warm Heart at this point.
Yeah, I might just, as I throw over to Philip for this race, as the boys have described, it's, as with all the races, it's very much in how it plays out. And in the first few furlongs, you may well know your fate a little bit. I should just give a little shout out, a little each way squeak to Lumiere Rock. Joseph O'Brien just has the one runner over here at this Breeders' Cup this year. They're bringing Lumiere Rock over. She's been a bit of a revelation, really, since they put the blinkers on her. She's really stepped forward. She probably doesn't have the same sexy progressive profile. And on all known form, you're looking at her and you're thinking she would have to take a big step forward. But I do think she is taking those steps forward. And I expect her to do the same again here. Whether that step will be big enough to mix it with the likes of Warm Heart and Inspiral is a question mark. But I do think that she's probably a little bit overpriced. Currently, like an anti-post price of 14s is too much for a horse like Lumiere Rock. So just throwing that in there. But Philip, is your focus on those top two European horses in Inspiral and Warm Heart, 6 and 2?
Everything that I want to do is just wants to just hammer Inspiral. I think if she's ever going to get 10 furlongs, it's at Santa Anita. They have the downhill start. It's a little bit easier. It's tighter turns. She doesn't have to be as far back probably as what Warm Heart's going to be. And I think she could end up just getting a dream trip. I think she could be 5-2. I think the horse I want to try to get in the mix at a price is the 9 Didia. I've really liked this filly. I thought she was impressive last time winning the Rodeo Drive. That was a soft race. We had a filly in there, but she just did it really impressively. It was her first start off of like a 3 or 4 month layoff. I think she's going to move forward. She's got to run over Santa Anita over this course and distance, which is definitely a unique surface. To me, the question is not Inspiral. The only way she loses is if she beats herself. If she just throws her head up when they come down the hill or whatever. But to me, it feels like she wants firmer ground. She should get a good trip. She absolutely can kick. And I really like the way Frankie's ridden her. Like in a couple of her most recent races, he just has put them to the sword and not even played around. And you made them no contests. And I think that style makes me feel like she's going to stretch. He's never worried about her stamina. He's saying, hey, I'm on the best horse, come get me. And her subpar performances, I think, you could say, hey, in the Sussex, it was just an absolute bog. She didn't want that. The QE2 at the end of the last year is a long year, soft ground. So to me, I just think her best race is a lot better than anybody else's. And if I wanted to take a horse stepping up from a mile that's been ridden the way that she's been ridden, or take a horse cutting back from a mile and a half, at Santa Anita, I'd much rather take a horse stepping up from a mile. At Keeneland, maybe it would be a different scenario with probably more give in the ground, maybe a little bit more of a stamina contest. But at Santa Anita, I'd much rather take a horse going from a mile to a mile and a quarter than dropping back in distance.
Okay. Yeah, I can see that. I can see that angle. Fascinating. As I said at the start, Fillies and Mares Turf, for me, one of the most interesting races, if not the most interesting race of the meeting. Let's move on, stick with the Fillies and Mares, but this time it is down to sprint trips, please. And of course, it's back to being all about the Americans here. JK, better start with you. Chance of it being a very quick fire double if an Italian has gone in for the man Chad Brown, with Goodnight Olive going for a win in the race again. Currently at the top of the market, she's going to go off a pretty hot favourite for this. Is it kind of the same rules apply as we've said a few times in terms of her best is a cut above these now?
Well, I mean, look, she was outstanding in the Filly and Mare Sprint last year. And her Madison was good, but it left a little to be desired. Her Derby City Distaff, she had trouble in there where she never really got a chance to run. Her Bed of Roses was an oddly run race that she ran well, but she wasn't running to her normal races. And I think people started to think she had tailed off. And in my opinion, her Ballerina might be the best race she ever ran, and she didn't win. She got taken out of her game to have to chase Echo Zulu around there. She ran a figure that makes sense in terms of what we know that she is. And when she drew the rail, I remember sitting on the couch and going, oh. And then, like, after 15 minutes of thinking about it, I'm actually extremely happy that she drew the rail, because I want her to be ridden more forwardly. I don't want her to take back. She was pretty close last year, considering she was 5th early, but she was close. I want her to be sent away from there to hold her position. I don't want her to take back and try to get cute. And I think from the inside, they'll kind of send her away from there to be forward. And I think that's going to play in her favor. Society won't get loose on her. And I think Goodnight Olive is one of 3 repeat champions that we're going to see at this Breeders' Cup.
Wow. Okay. Repeat champions. I'm all about that. I like a repeat champion. Philip, I'll come to you next. Do you share that sort of same confidence with Goodnight Olive? I like that angle of, I think it's easy to look at the fact she's beaten and sort of think, oh, that is a negative. But JK's kind of outlined it so well there in regards to how that run could have been one of her better ones because of how it played out. Do you share that same confidence about her here?
As a general rule in handicapping for me, her race that she ran in the Ballerina, I completely agree with what JK said. It wasn't her ideal trip. Her main competitor, Echo Zulu, looked like she was going to be as loose as she wants, which ended up happening. But it also never felt like she was going to win at any point. And she got a really fast number that's significantly faster than what she's run. Sometimes I think horses like that, she's going to come back to some level of mean. It was also her only start in the slop, and she has a monster. She has a monster like wet pedigree. I just don't love her at 6-5. The price is the only thing. I think she's going to absolutely trip out. I think Society and Yagiri are probably going to go straight to the front. You also have Clearly Unhinged is drawn down inside. Ida's drawn down inside. Ida's in there. I think you could have 4 horses that just go, and I don't think she's going to be way off of it, but from the rail, she should get a really good stalking trip. I'm going to have her on all tickets. I ended up, and it's part of it is a sentimental thing. I'm good friends with the owner of the 5, Kirsten Bosch. I don't know if she's good enough to win. She's probably not good enough to win, but I think she's a horse that if the pace gets hot, which I think it's almost guaranteed to be hot, Yagiri's very good. She's much better at 6. Society has got one way to win, and it's get completely loose on the front. I could see a world where this pace gets really quick, and kind of like Shamrock Rose won a couple years ago, or that's more than a couple years ago now, but at Churchill, where you could look at the race after the race was over and say, how does she win this? But it just became a complete pace meltdown. And I could see something like that happening here because you have a couple of horses who are very good, but the only way they can win is if they get loose on the front. I'm not way against Goodnight Olive. I just don't love, what could be even money or less. And Kirsten Bosch is a horse I want to try to get in the mix at a much bigger price.
Okay. Peter, do you agree with her at a much bigger price, or are you more about the horses nearer the top of the market here?
I think it's a 2-horse race. I think it's just Society and Goodnight Olive just stand out above this field on figures. I think Society's been really good and is one of these horses who, when you examine the runs, looks like maybe somebody could think is in need the lead, but I don't think really is the way she's been able to finish up. I think she can just get a great forward trip. I don't like the draw for Goodnight Olive. We don't know how the track's going to be playing here as we sit and we do this show on Wednesday night, but the modern racetrack profile a lot of times has the rail just not really being the place to be. It seems like there's some theory among groundskeepers at track maintenance crews, whatever you want to say, that a dead rail somehow makes for a safer track. And it's just a lot to overcome. I mean, Goodnight Olive can easily win. I think Society's better value, but I will say this. I mean, I think Phillips Kirstenbosch is super duper interesting to get in there and run third to those two. I like that trifecta a lot.
Like, to me, okay. Society is a horse, like Society's going to win or she's going to be nowhere, which is kind of how her form is. Like, if she gets loose and gets confident and just gallops them into the ground, she could win by 4 or 5. She's done it plenty of times in big races, but she's also been there and then done absolutely no running at the end of the race. And to me, she's just kind of a boom or bust type horse.
Boom or bust. I hate those sort of horses, but when I'm always tend to be with them when they bust and against them when they boom tends to be my Tends to be the way, I'm afraid. On we roll, guys. On we roll to the mile. And judging by the tip sheet, big split opinion again here. I knew it was going to get spicy as this show rolled on. So Morge is, of course, well, I say of course, is currently an anti-post favourite for this, for the Saeed bin Saror team. But up near the top of the betting is, of course, the Japanese mare in Songline, master of the season there for Charlie Appleby. So Godolphin got a relatively good handle on this. Kalina, of course, the surprise winner of the Foray when we last saw here in pretty, controversial circumstances, ended up in the steward's room that race. But Morge, the focus point here. Philip, I'm going to start with you because I'm intrigued to see what you think with that sort of like European handle on her form and then what she did when we last saw her over the 9 in Keeneland. Of course, there was a debate over whether she was going to go up in trip to the Fillies and Mares Turf or down in trip to this. They were very clear that this is where they wanted to go with her. It's been a fascinating campaign by the Saeed Yard with her throughout this year, I think. Very, unconventional, hasn't it? With that Maidan start, the Guineas, the summer off, America. She's done a bit of everything. I'm with her in this. I'm really excited to see her around Santa Anita and the mile here. What's your view on Morge and the campaign she's had, and specifically what she did at Keeneland last time? Would you have put her over further for this, or are you pleased with their decision to drop to the mile?
I might have put her over further. I think it's, they kept her here after the QE2. We actually had 2 horses in the QE2, and we were up entertaining our partners. And I saw Dan Pride, who would be a good friend, and he's the CEO of Darley America. But he said, "Oh, hey, come here. I want you to meet somebody." And it was Saeed. And I was kind of like, "Oh, we have no shot if Saeed's flown over with this filly for the big race." And she was super impressive. And, I think the fact she beat Tahira, it was forever back to third. Tahira, all she did was go on and win 3 Group 1s after that. It's probably the best 3-year-old filly in Europe this year. But it is just a weird campaign. And to me, it's a lot to ask for. Like, she had a hard race at Keeneland. She was on the pace. She kind of had to shake loose, got a little bit of a challenge, put those away, and then Lindy flew at her late. I guess the thought would be if she takes a step forward off that race, she could be very good. Ultimately, I think Songline is very serious. I wanted to make her my top pick. I ended up going with Kalina just because I think she'd be a much bigger price. But if Songline can float up at all, that'd be a horse I definitely want to bet. I thought Kalina, it says good to soft, but everybody that was in France would say the ground was firmer on ARC weekend. I think horses traditionally that have run in the 4A do well in the Breeders' Cup Mile. And I think this filly could actually float up quite a bit in price. And it just feels like her races on firmer footing are her best races. So maybe she can take a step forward. But again, I think I'd probably be slightly against Maj at the price, because I think if I could get Songline or Maj at a similar thing, I'd much prefer Songline.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I do think the price has been squeezed with Morge. I feel like she's been a bit of like the horse to be with. A lot of whispers about Morge on the track. It's a very international field, JK, which is, of course, what the Breeders' Cup event wants. Representation from the UK, from Japan, obviously America, and then the French horse in there as well. It's a spicy little contest. How did you dissect some of that international form? How do you weigh it up? How do you get a handle on the race?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that, Songline and Kalina are 2 horses that I'll definitely use. I'm a little bit against Maj for a couple of reasons. One, I thought she got loose in there going longer, and that was kind of her, her it was a very good race for her. But the problem for me is that horses don't win this race wire to wire. They just doesn't happen. Especially because it seems like there's always a scramble to get to the front. There's always horses that don't really like where they drew because of that scramble to get to the front going into the first turn, that they're used aggressively. There's always firm ground, so people want to, take advantage of that. And I just feel like this race always ends up kind of falling apart. And I just still can't really design the race in which Maj is going to get a great trip cutting back like that with slow pace figures last time. Just a little bit of a concern to me, and I think she's going to be overbet. Like I said, I'll use the other two, but the one horse that I'm really pretty high on, and I have been since the middle of the summer, is Casa Creed. He's just a horse that always shows up. He's been doing it for years now, whether you put him on a plane to Saudi Arabia, you put him on a plane to Dubai, you run him, it doesn't matter. He just shows up and he runs, whether he's going 6, whether he's going a mile. He's just a gutsy horse. And I think one thing that he's always wanted was a chance to kind of run at real pace in a mile race on firm ground, and he's going to get that. I think Casa Creed is going to outrun his odds, and I really do look for him to come rolling late. I don't know if he's going to be good enough to beat a horse like Songline, but I do think that he definitely deserves to be involved in your wagers.
Okay, keeping him on side then. Peter, what about you in this? I know that a little bit later you're keen on a French horse, but we haven't even mentioned a horse like Master of the Seas in here, who, of course, comes here off the back of the slight disappointment when we last saw him for the Appleby team. But we know what Team Appleby does with these sort of races. He's a quirky little, I was going to swear, but I am a professional, so I didn't. But he is quirky. We've seen it on the track already this week. We've seen it in his form before. We've seen it at the Breeders' Cup. We've seen that quirk at the Breeders' Cup as well. So he's quite an unattractive horse for punters, I think. But he remains a talented horse, and I think he probably is worth a mention in here, isn't he?
Well, I think he would have been worth more of a mention if he was not drawn in the mall out by Din Tai Fung here at Santa Anita. That's going to be very tricky for Master of the Seas, who I was already a little against on my sort of pet theory. He's just more of a galloping type of a horse that wouldn't be suited by this configuration anyway. But, you mentioned the French runner. I do think Kalina goes with a chance. I respect Songline, but I'm trying to blow up the board in here, Vanessa, with Sherrill Spite. This is a horse whose form, to me, just looks very dirtied up. These last 2 runs has been short of fitness both times, according to connections. Had no chance of catching Master of the Seas in the Woodbine Mile with that pace setup. Ran second in this race last year to Modern Games, who's no slouch. And I just think he's kind of laid out for this at 30-1 with a good draw in a race where so many of these horses we're talking about have very, very difficult draws. I mean, I would have wanted to make you a wise guy case for More Than Looks. That one's in the 13, Master of the Seas 14, Kalina 11, Songline 10. None of that's going to be easy. Maybe Sherrill Spite can trip out a little bit in here and get a piece of this. If not, win the whole thing. 30-1, sign me up.
Wow. Okay. I like it. That's a big price swing there. For that, I will reward you by you can go first in the Distaff, you lucky little thing, Peter. Now, this race is, I mean, I'm not going to lie, it's like some sort of absolute hellhole for European punters. So I can safely say I have absolutely no handle on this race itself. So you, Peter, can help and, point me in the right direction. Idiomatic, the one at the top of the market for Brad Cox, off the back of this role that she's found herself on. She's taking on Adair Manor, Clariere in their randomized and search result for, of course, Chad Brown. But like the Brad Cox horse at the top, in fact, are you going to share with people the bet you've had in regards to Brad Cox? Can I throw you under the bus with that?
Yeah, that was a drunken bet that I'm going to quite possibly lose, though this race will probably determine whether I win or lose it. I bet our crazy Australian friend, Andrew Brown, he wanted to bet that Brad Cox was going to, win everything. So we made a 1.5 Brad Cox winners bet. He took the over. I took the under. Idiomatic can absolutely win. She's been so good, but I don't have her on top here because it just feels like a race that almost has to be a pace boil over. And if it's a pace boil over, I think Clariere is the one who is the best closer. She didn't look good in the last race, but remember last year coming into this, she didn't look good in the prep or it was the pre-prep. It was the same similar kind of spacing too, off a bad effort. She ran third, almost won the whole thing. I think she's terrific in here. Again, wild prices from last week are long gone. She's still my top pick. This could get so fast and crazy also. I see, looking at the grid, we have a couple of people who suggest Wet Paint to hit the board. I could surely see that. But what about Le Davida at 1,000,000 to 1? I mean, this is a race where just 2 years ago we saw was 2 years ago, yeah, the boil over of all boil overs with Marsh Lorraine coming out of nowhere. I mean, this is a race where I truly believe, because the pace is going to be so wild, you could see a 30-to-1 winner again. I'm with Clairiere. I'll respect Idiomatic to have on tickets. Plus, I need to hedge with the brownie bet. But I have Le Davida coming to get a piece in third here. 9-4-11 in the Distaff.
Okay. Clairiere then at the top of that, 9-4-11. JK, you in agreement in regards to how this race might play out for Clairiere?
Yeah, I think it's going to be fast. I think she's going to get a setup. And she's one of those horses that she needs a setup to kind of run her best race. I don't think she's one of those types of horses that's going to overcome a lot of adversity. And I think that if they run in front of her, she should be able to pick up some pieces. And I do think she will do that. Idiomatic has gotten really good, and in speed and dirt races is something that I'll always respect. So I'm not going to try to get cute. The speed can win as well. So I'll definitely have both of them. My more clever opinion, if you want to call it that, is the 6 search results. I think she's going to run well. I think that, if you look at her 9 furlong races, she lost to Malathot in the Kentucky Oaks. She lost in the Ogden Phipps at 1.16 miles. But she's been losing to good horses with bad circumstances. I think she's going to run significantly better than some people might think. I see her getting into the trifecta.
Okay. Who else would you like to add into the mix, Philip? Any other names to add in? The mention of Wet Paint there from Peter in terms of a selection, a name that you would like to throw in there amidst the others?
Yeah, I just think it's a play on the pace scenario. I think, Randomize has got a ton of speed. Adair Menor has basically been ahead by open links in all of her races. So has Idiomatic. And, if you look at the fractions in some of Idiomatic's last races, they're relatively slow. And I think she's going to have to go much faster. So I just think it could set up. I thought I was getting a little bit cute with Clairiere, and then Pete and JK both picked her as well. I will say I got my picks in first, but no, I thought Wet Paint could get a good setup. To just come from off the pace. I think, just purely a pace play. I wouldn't be shocked if Idiomatic just set just off. The one thing I didn't like was just she was drawn down inside, of Adair Menor, and I thought maybe Adair Menor could just put the pressure on her and make it tough for her to get the right kind of trip in here. But, I was selfishly kind of hoping Clairiere. She's just been a cool horse to follow. She's danced a lot of dances, and, she has, her best race is certainly good enough to win.
Yeah, I love it when you go first with your picks, Philip, and then the lads obviously filled in this chart we've got. And like you say, you're trying to be clever, and then they're also trying to be clever too. The wise guy selection, Clairiere. We roll on, guys, to the Breeders' Cup Turf. And if I was talking about the Fillies and Mares Turf being a fascinating race, then, oh my lordy, this for the Europeans. In terms of the market, the top 4 are all over from Europe. Auguste Rodin is the main horse in there for Aidan O'Brien. Mostadaf follows him in the betting. King of Steel after that, and Ernesto over from France. So to cover those, you've got Auguste Rodin, this horse that was spoken so highly of from the Aidan O'Brien camp all season. Obviously won an English Derby, then disappointed midsummer in a King George. No one really forgave him for that. He then came back and he's won an Irish Champion Stakes, and then he was put away for a trip over here. There's so much to like about this horse in terms of his ability, his physique, his breeding. But the question mark with him, I think it's fair to say, is the blips. People are putting 2 and 2 together and putting it down to the fact that travel may be an issue with him. But then you flip that coin over and he's won an English Derby. He's won a Vertem Futurity over in England. So he's travelled and won, but he's travelled and flopped too. I was going to say it's hard to know what to expect with him over here, but maybe I'm being harsh on him. He's just got quite a funny profile to really get a true, trustworthy handle on. Meanwhile, Mostadaf, as an older horse, has just improved all season. is a tough, hardened international campaigner for John and Thady Gosden. Comes here off the back of just putting performance on top of performance this summer. Obviously finished behind Equinox in Maidan, best horse in the world in terms of turf, middle distance horses. And then he's just gone from strength to strength in the UK with those 2 Group 1 wins. And then he comes here having bailed on the Champion Stakes, which is, of course, rolls me on to the next horse, King of Steel. King of Steel, fascinating contender. Not going to lie, happy to say it out loud, not heard this from trainer or jockey, but I would have a strong inclination that trainer and maybe those around the horse would have preferred this horse to have been put away after he won the Champion Stakes at Ascot. There was only a couple of weeks ago on heavy ground, grueling conditions, doing it the hard way from the back of the field. And then he's come here. He's had a hard season. I think the owner is very sporting. I think the owner wanted to be here. And I think that's probably why this horse is here. I don't think the track will suit. I don't think the race will suit. So I'm happy to write a line through him. And I am also happy to write a line through Ernesto. I think we're clutching at straws thinking that what he's done this season is the same as Mostahdaf or Auguste Rodin. So that's my European handle on the turf. Big split opinion here from all of us and the boys. JK, I'll come to you first. You've inexplicably put up a horse who isn't from Europe for this race. Explain yourself.
Well, I heard 19 times today about Mostahdaf and how good he is, and look,
first and foremost from me myself. First and foremost from me.
Yeah, you were one of those people. But here's the thing: is in the Breeders' Cup betting challenge, I've gotten second twice, and both times I did it on the back of a European horse winning the turf. So with Yabir and also with help me out, Pete. What's green and red silks?
Tarnawa.
Tarnawa. So I'm not going to try to get beat by Mostahdaf or even Ernesto, who Pete, I respect your opinion. I just have an opinion about Up to the Mark that I can't ignore. And look, we can win this race. We have with horses like Domestic Spending. And to be honest, Up to the Mark was having a domestic spending, not domestic spending, bricks and mortar, having a bricks and mortar looking campaign prior to the injury that had him miss the summer. And then he comes back in the mile in a race that he ran extremely, extremely well. I thought he was beat. He got beat by a real horse and Master of the Seas. He came back and beat a real horse and Master of the Seas. And I just feel like he's supposed to take another step forward. And the fact that they made this decision to run in this race, I just think he's going to run well. I think he's going to be ignored because these European horses always take money in this race because they always win it. I understand that. I wanted to put him on top to emphasize how much I like him, but it's not as if I'm going to try to beat these other horses with him in some sort of blaze of glory. I'm not going to go out with an American flag wrapped around my body while these horses from Europe go rolling down the middle of the track.
What a shame. What a shame, because I'd have liked to have seen that. Okay, Philip, I will come to you next then. It's an interesting angle JK's decided to play with that, and he's explained himself very well. I understand the angle he's coming from. Are you happy with my slightly big statement that I'm happy to write a line through specifically King of Steel because of what I just said about him?
Yeah, I couldn't bet King of Steel with your money in this race, so I wouldn't be betting him. I hope JK's right. We stand not this time the sire of Up to the Mark. I think there's no question Up to the Mark is the best U.S. turf horse. Very similar to Bricks and Mortar. I think the big question with Bricks and Mortar was, could he get the mile and a half? To me, I was really split. I think on the tip sheet, I did it yesterday, so I ended up picking Auguste Rodin. I ended up looking at a bunch of the stuff on the flight out here. Mostahdaf will be a strong play for me. I think I went back and just watched a bunch of his races, and I think I was kind of thrown off by the Shima Classic. And the more I've watched it, I'm like, you know what? He made first run at what you said is the best horse. Ratings wise, is the best horse in the world in Equinox. to me, I just think he wants firm ground. We were at Ascot, a small group of us, when he won the Prince of Wales, and maybe that wasn't the strongest race in the world, but he literally jumped past those horses, which included a Derby winner and Luxembourg was a Grade 1 winner. I mean, he jumped past him in like 3 strides, and just the race was over. I think that turn of foot is what you have to be successful in America. Auguste Rodin's been impressive, but to me, Auguste Rodin is going to have to improve to beat Mostadaf, which could happen on the day. But I think Mostadaf, there's maybe less question marks, and I think the price might be equal.
Okay, I like it. I like your angle. I like your play, Philip. Last line on this to you, Peter. And we are very much on different sides of the fence here with Ernesto.
And it's not like I don't like Mostadaf. I think Mostadaf's terrific. I've got him on speed figures and form figures from our team that do numbers over there as clearly rated the best in the race. I've always kind of liked the horse. I was with Michelle Yu during that Prince of Wales. We were in the Royal Enclosure enjoying a bottle of her favorite champagne, and she at the last second insisted that I run a bet for Mostadaf for her, and when he won, she did a cartwheel. We almost got kicked out of the Royal Enclosure, but Mostadaf, horse I've long been a fan of and is certainly in the mix. But Ernesto, on the form figures from the guys who I already shouted out Dove, so I don't have to do the whole moniker again, but Stephen Bonnick, who does an amazing job. He has a write-up on our In the Money Plus side of every non-U.S. contender with figures, speed and form figures, wherever he could conjure them. He's got Ernesto ranked a point behind Mostadaf. Ernesto came home in some 34 seconds in the Arc. The Arc's been just a fabulous trial for this over the years, and I think this horse is fast enough, good enough. The ground listing was wrong in Paris. That was much more like proper good firm ground than the good to soft it's listed as. And I think Ernesto can surprise people and is the value of the race.
All right. Okay. I respect your opinion. I'm not having a yard of it, but I respect your opinion. So that's fine. Right, on we go to the Classic, guys. We're actually running out of time and we haven't even got to the Classic. So let's rattle through this. The Classic, obviously we've had high-profile scratchings, none more so than Arcangelo, very disappointing, but we can only focus on what's running. And as a result, Arabian Night is your anti-post favourite for the Bob Baffett yard. JK, how do you rate his form coming into this? Do you rate him highly at this stage?
I thought Arabian Night was the best 3-year-old in the country early in the year. He got hurt. He came back in the Haskell and ran a race that makes sense based off of a short, off of coming in a little bit short. And then I thought he was outstanding in the way that he won the Pacific Classic, going 1.25 miles. Baffert's good with this move. He did it with American Pharoah. He did it with Arrogate, training up from a summer race. I think he's going to be tough to beat from that outside post. He's going to get some pressure, but I think he'll probably let someone go. One horse that's really I've warmed up to is Zandon. I'm not a huge horse flesh guy, but he's looked outstanding this morning when I've seen him on TV before getting out here. So I'll give him a look. I think he's just kind of figured it out. I think he likes it out here in California.
Okay, you like the look of him then. Philip, will come to you next, because in this, I mean, I feel like I want to be with Bob's horse, Bob Baffert's horse, but I also feel like I don't have a handle that much on, for example, the Japanese horse with like Ushba Tesoro, who Peter's big pal Michael has been banging on about morning after morning here so far this week. Michael, if you're watching, I don't mean that in a negative way, but you've made me pin my eyes to this Japanese horse. Are you keeping him on side, Philip?
He ended up being my top pick in here. I don't think any of the American horses are just that fast relative to what it takes to normally win a race like this.
Interesting.
Now maybe there could be a lot of improvement from a 3-year-old like Arabian Night. He's very lightly raced. But his best buyer is a 101. Historically, that's just nowhere close to what it's going to take to win. I think you even look at a horse that's drawn outside of him like Proxy. There's definitely not as much forward move for Proxy as there would be for Arabian Night, but he actually has multiple He has 3 buyers that are faster than anything Arabian Nights run. To me, Ushba Tesoro, if he runs the race he ran in Dubai, he wins. I don't know that was the strongest race in the world, but I like him, and I think White Abario is, to me, is the most likely American winner. I think he's just likely to get a good trip, sitting just off the speed. I think the question, I wouldn't be completely convinced he wants a mile and a quarter. That maybe be my question on White Abario, and maybe why I didn't make him my top pick, and why I landed on Ushba Tesoro, because I know, that final quarter mile, he's going to be running faster than anybody, and it's just a question of, can somebody hang on as he's trying to run him down.
Okay, I like that. That's helped me with my confidence that Michael's also pushing on me, read the Japanese. Peter, do you want to throw anyone else into the mix for the Classic?
My big statement on the Classic is that if White Abario runs anything like the race we saw at the Whitney in Saratoga, it's as simple as he's going to win. I hear the distance concern, but for me, it's an Indutro we trust. This reminds me a lot of St. Liam, which was a much easier race. I mean, we're going way back here, but that was a much easier race. Horse of Dutros, who was had the fastest race, and it was, is he going to get the distance? He did, and he won. I think it could be the same thing here. Respect Zandon, respect Ushba Tesoro, and it's going to be as simple as that for me. Those are my 3 big ones.
All right, on we go then to the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint, guys. Over, of course, the 5 furlongs. I'm hearing hasn't been taken out of the betting as of right now, but Bradsell is a non-runner for the Archie Watson Yard from over here in the UK, which is disappointing. He's had a hit-and-miss profile, but if he is a non-runner, which is what I'm reading on the old Twitter, or X as it's now known, then that's a disappointing loss, but yet to be taken out of the anti-post markets. But that will leave Living the Dream up there at the top of the market for the story for the Europeans, one of the stories of the weekend in Adam West. Adam West, for anyone listening out there very briefly, very small trainer, like low-grade trainer in the UK, and has ended up with this horse living the dream. And it's obviously the ultimate cliche because they are living a dream being out here in Santa Anita. And haven't we witnessed that, Pete, over here in these mornings with the owner and the trainer and the family? It's been great to see, but we want winners. Can he win?
He can win. And the only trouble with that team is, they just don't look like they're having any fun at the races. Now they're living up to this horse's name. And I love the way this horse was prepped. There's a hoodoo stat about European turf sprinters, not like there's a big Ophir stat about them running on this main oval at Santa Anita while turf sprinting. This horse doesn't have to face that hoodoo because of that run at Keeneland. And those opening fractions at Keeneland were ridiculously fast, and that was with the horse not even really breaking with alacrity. Now, there's other speed in here, obviously, but I think Living the Dream can get the job done. Not the kind of race where I think it would be wise to stand alone, but that's my top pick.
All right, JK, what are we saying about Caravel? Obviously won it at a huge price for the team this time last year over at Keeneland. Could she do it again at a big enough price? Not the same price, but still pretty big.
Yeah. I think she could win. Living the Dream got beat by the 3 other horses that can't warm up the top 2 in here to me, and so I just can't get behind that. I think Caravel's going to run at her at some point, run at him at some point, and make things hard for him and maybe put him away. But I'm a big Invasion fan. I think the cutback and the firm turf are going to hit him right between the eyes. I think he's going to come rolling. I think it's Caravel or Big Invasion, and I'd have a hard time seeing anyone else win.
Okay. Caravel or Big Invasion then for JK. Sharing the same thoughts here, Philip, or do you have a sort of wise guy selection for us against Caravel or Big Invasion?
I probably wouldn't want Caravel. We actually did this thing up at Saratoga, and I tipped Cogburn that day, but I think she needs the lead, or she needs to be outside of other speed horses. And I think the 3 post is terrible. If she was drawn out in 10 and maybe she could just sit off somebody, I think she can stalk, but I don't think she's as good if she's drawn inside other speed horses. I ended up landing on the 10 Matorius. I think this horse did something in the Green Flash at Del Mar last time that's very hard to do, and he came from way off the pace going 5 furlongs. But he ran huge in the race at Churchill with probably not a great trip when No Balls got loose. He's run 3 really good races in his last 3, and he can clearly handle 5 furlongs. And I think he picks Pratt back up, which is one of the best turf riders. I like Big Invasion. I've been a huge Big Invasion fan. He'll be on my tickets. I thought Aesop's Fables was slightly interesting. This horse was 3 to 5 in a Group 1 as a 2-year-old, and he just didn't live up to the hype. They basically have kept him sprinting this year, and he's had a pretty poor run of form. Maybe the 3rd to Shaquille back in May doesn't look as bad now, but they put blinkers on him last time, and he ran a much better race in the Abbey. And I think he's a horse that I just want to be interested in at what's going to be a big number, at least for some sort of exotic underneath.
Yeah, it'll be a huge price for sure. Aesop's Fable. Right, last race then, guys. Sorry to everyone there watching. We have gone a little bit over, but last race to get through. Hopefully you have enjoyed it. This is, of course, the sprint. Elite Power. I mean, JK, I'm going to start with you here. Everyone's going Elite Power mad. He's a short anti-post price, but how short would he be if he won the last day when we last saw him? I mean, can you pick holes in him? Are we picking holes in him? Do you want to pick holes in Elite Power?
No, I mean, I think he's my strongest opinion of the weekend. If I have money left in the Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge and he wins, just know that I did well. He's one of those types of horses where I think he got ignored a little bit this summer because he finally got beat by Gunite, and he feels like he's a horse. He's going to do better going 7. And how did he lose to Gunite going 7? That's his game. And look, I think his game is 6 furlongs with pace to close into, and that's exactly what he's going to get. I think if anybody in this field beats him at Speedboat Beach, the progressive 3-year-old who's got room to improve. But I think I said it at one point during the show, I think there's 3 repeat champions. I think Cody's Wish is one of them. I think Goodnight Olive is the other. And the one that I'm the most certain of winning a back-to-back championship would be Elite Power.
Love it. Love it. I love a strong opinion, don't we, Peter? That's what we're here for. We're finishing with a strong opinion from JK. Wraps it up nicely. And I know you're also with Elite Power.
Indeed. We're going to let JK go because he's got a car waiting for him outside. I think it's a limousine with, tricked out tires or something like that.
It's an Uber X. It's an Uber X. I'm just kidding. I don't do Uber. It's at least comfort for me. There's just pay the extra $8. Love you guys. Good luck.
We used to have a game on the show where it was like, name that tune. How few words can you do this race in? I need 2. Elite.
Love it. Love it. Okay. So it's 2 strong votes for Elite Power. And then I wanted to finish with a really strong, we're all on the same wavelength opinion, Philip. But you have ruined that, judging by the tip sheet I have in front of me.
Yeah, I think JK said it earlier. He put somebody on top. I'm not against Elite Power. I think he's probably the most likely winner of the race. I ended up picking Dr. Shivel. We're going to stand him at TaylorMade next year. But I thought he ran really well last time. He was coming off of a layoff. He likes Santa Anita. He's 4 for 6 lifetime. He almost won this race a couple years ago at Del Mar. I don't think there were any Elite Powers in there that year. To me, Elite Power is probably the most likely winner. Just from a value perspective, I like Dr. Shivel. I also thought, the Chosen Vron is an interesting horse for me. He's 7 for 8 at Santa Anita. A lot of that is against much softer horses. He's basically been running against Cowbreds, but they stepped him up into the Bing Crosby at 6. He was in the mix of a bunch of horses. He ran really well. Anarchist, the second place finisher, came back to win a Group 2 after that. This is a horse that just likes to win, and he likes to win at Santa Anita. And I think it's a track sometimes that some horses handle it and some don't. Purely from an exotic perspective. or if you have a really strong opinion somewhere else and you want to spread in this race and try to beat Elite Power, I think those are a couple of horses that you could use. I'd also say, Speedboat Beach and Gunite. You feel obvious, and JK may be onto something. Maybe if there's an upset shot in here, it could be Speedboat Beach just gets loose on the front and just has more of a forward move than anything else.
Okay, well that wraps up our Breeders' Cup preview show. I'm going to hand back to Peter now to do the final thank yous, seeing as this is, of course, an In the Money Media collaboration. But from my point of view, guys, enjoy it. What a weekend. It's going to be a joy to be here. Thank you so much, as always, for having me. I love these shows. I find it fascinating. I hope the viewers and listeners do too. All aboard Porter Fortuna. Good luck to you guys with her. But Peter, it's over to you for the final goodbyes.
Great stuff, Vanessa. What a wonderful job you did hosting Philip. Always a pleasure. Just gets, not that you're ever bad, better and better every time we do one of these things. For JK, really want to give a big thank you out there to Molly Heyer, who works so hard behind the scenes putting all this stuff together and has to deal with all kinds of difficult nonsense from troublesome talent such as myself. Do also want to remind folks that Molly has a picks grid from the show. That's going to be emailed to everybody. So if you didn't get everything written down, that's okay. That same grid or very similar will also be available to our In the Money Plus subscribers if you're watching this on your replay. If you're watching on YouTube, leave us a comment. Let us know that you liked the show or didn't like the show, or who you think's going to win at this year's Breeders' Cup. For In the Money Media, for TaylorMade Partnerships and Medallion Racing, I'm Peter Thomas Fornatel. May you win all your Breeders' Cup photos.